Rock Tozer with you, and joining us live on the Morning Express by telephone from Kitchener is Jake Bertrand. Jake's Welcome Home CD is one of my favorites, so I thought I'd invite him on the program so we can get to know him and his story a little bit better, and I'm going to play you a couple of his songs that you may recognize just after we talk. Jake, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit more about your background, Jake, in music. When did you start? Who are some of your early influences?
Goodness, I started writing songs on a regular basis and performing when I was about 14 years old, so right at the beginning of high school. And some of my early influences, it probably would have been, Bryan Adams was a big one. On the Christian side, it would have been, Petra, Amy Grant was one. I listened to a lot of music, so those are the biggest ones, I guess.
Yeah. How would you describe your musical style today and as it's developed over the years, and your sensibilities too? What style of music really fires you up?
Rock is still probably the genre that gets me fired up. I would say, as far as my musical style, it's evolved over the years. I'm kind of more of acoustic rock at this point. When I first started, it was probably similar, just maybe some more, synthesizer stuff in there. But acoustic rock is probably what I would term it as.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because you do have such an interesting and a challenging story, and I want you to tell a little bit of that, if you're comfortable doing so. Shortly before the recording of your first record, you encountered some health challenges, and those are ongoing for you. Would you be willing to share that story?
Yeah, for sure. When I was about 16 years old, I started getting really sick, and long story short, it was about 6 years of trying to figure out what it was. I had some serious liver dysfunction in that time, and it got very, very serious at one point. And when I was about 22 years old, I was diagnosed with lupus. And so that's basically the ongoing journey there, and I still work through that to this day. But yeah, preceding my first album, it was really a tough time there, so I was thankful to pull through that.
Moving forward to 2010, I get the impression that you basically willed yourself to go back into the studio to do another record, and that the record that you made was Welcome Home, the one I was referring to a few minutes ago that I love so much. Can you talk about the inspiration behind those songs, just generally speaking, what you were thinking as you were going into the making of that record?
Right. Well, I got to a point where I just felt like, okay, enough is enough. I really need to get in the studio again and record some more music. It had been a while and had been pushing through some health stuff for quite a while. So the songs that I was writing around that time and that I had written preceding going into the studio, just really kind of focused on, pushing through battles, pushing through tough times, finding hope in God through all of that, and knowing that, if there is something that means a lot to me in a song, chances are there's people out there who it's going to mean something to as well, So that was really the inspiration for me recording that album.
Well, if you're just tuning in, I'm talking with Canadian recording artist. He's from Kitchener, Jake Bertrand. You can learn more about him at jakebertrand.com, Bertrand. And we should mention as well that you chose to work for this new record, Welcome Home, with Andy Horrocks, who's an award-winning producer here in Ontario. Talk a little bit about Andy, because I know we have a lot of recording artists out there or people who hope to make a CD someday, and the choice of producer is so huge. What is it exactly that Andy brings to the table that makes him so popular?
Well, it helped that Andy was a good friend of mine before I actually went in the studio, and we do live in the same town, so there's that as well. But he really, I really found that he really gives the artist a lot of creative freedom. Just gives the artist a lot of room to be themselves. He did that with me. And he just really encouraged me to be real in my songwriting. If he felt like I was holding back at all, he really encouraged me to push forward. So he really likes to be true to the artist, and then just to try to push the artist to that place of excellence that he really can see in them. He really has the ability to I think just see the giftings in an artist and push them towards what he knows that they can accomplish.
Yeah.
So.
There's an authenticity in the record that you're not mentioning. When you first went into the studio, you really were still struggling, even with your voice quite a bit. You had throat infection and those sorts of things, but I know, was very encouraging in helping you to push through all of that with the vocals and so on.
He was, and I don't know that he's had a lot of experience, working with someone who had the health challenges I did, but, we in the middle of a session, and I was really fighting through, and he did a good job of pushing me without pushing me too far, and also being, very sensitive to the health challenges that I did have, so, yeah.
Well, I want to close by playing a couple of your songs, a couple of my favorites from the record, a song called Mistake that seems to stem directly out of these challenges and your the fight that's in you regarding those. But my favorite song on the record is one called With the Angels. Would you tell us the background, the story behind that song?
Yeah, I wrote that song about 4 years ago. A friend of mine, her mom had passed away, and so I wrote the song and ended up playing it at the funeral. But really it was kind of a culmination of a journey that I had been on a few years before that. I had lost a couple of close friends. They had been killed in car accidents, and as well as a cousin. So it was kind of my own journey of healing that really as well lent into the writing of that song. And then a few years later, in January of 2010, my grandfather passed away. So I ended up dedicating the song to him. And it's really just about the hope of heaven, and that is very real, as hard as it may to think about sometimes. So just hope it's an encouragement to others who are walking through that journey.
You miss me like crazy.